I would like to focus my part on actually continuing also the link that you created during yesterday's panel on these increasing securitization trends that we see in the European Union and its borders and outside, and try to make a link on how this actually reflects into the AI Act. In fact, when we look at the AI Act, we can see like a common pattern that we have seen already, and we see more generally in European policy making processes, where it's really easy to see that there is an intentional distinction made between the rights of European citizens and the rights of non-European citizens or historically oppressed communities and racialized communities. We have seen it already in the past with other regulation approaches, again, specifically in the digital rights domain. So the European Union is really famous for having like an important regulation on data protection, the GDPR, that really creates high standards for the protection of the right to privacy or data protection for European citizens. But at the same time, and in the same years, the same institutions have been establishing surveillance infrastructure to surveil and extract data from non-European citizens in total disregard of what the principles of the GDPR are within the AI Act. So in the next few minutes, I would like to give some example of how we see the risk in the AI Act to consolidate this double standard approach that is rooted in history of oppression and institutionalized racism. So the first example in which I think we could see this attempt to create double standards is a proposal that came from the Council. So the Council is representative of European governments to include a blanket exemption for the use of AI systems for activities related to national security. So national security is a very broad and vague term. Theoretically, the European Union does not have competence to rule on national security matters. It's an internal matter. At the same time, there is no consolidated definition of what national security is. And we have seen in the last years, and are seeing it a lot right now, how much the notion of national security can be exploited depending on what are the political atmospheres. So this is really worrying, that the Council came with this proposal that any AI system that is linked to a national security activity should be excluded. And we as civil society, with a number of civil society, but also scholars, have been pushing back against this proposal that comes from the Council. But these national security examples just gives us an insight on the more broad and general issue of how the AI Act is trying to carve out some various derogations for the use of AI systems when the users are law enforcement authorities, governments in general, and migration, asylum, and border management authorities. One of the strongest part of this act is the prohibition part, so saying that some systems are simply not fit for fundamental rights and should be prohibited. And throughout the various prohibitions, there are exceptions that would make this ban not applicable when non-European citizens are affected. So, for example, there is a proposal from the European Parliament to ban any motion recognition system, which the Council seems to agree in principle, to the level that this ban does not apply to law enforcement and border management activities. So in this way, they agree that motion recognition will be prohibited when it's used against European children at school or European workers in the workplace, but at the same time is really keen on allowing for its use at the European borders, for example, in the context of police activities. So this is the kind of system that would be allowed with this type of derogation. But when we see also some other type of attempted legalization of impunity when it comes to the category of high-risk AI systems. So the AI Act not only prohibits systems, but then it sets some rules for systems that in principle are not bad, but could have a very negative effect. So because of that, because there is a risk that they might infringe fundamental rights that should be subjected to specific rules. And there is a list of what these systems are. And the proposal was falling short since the very beginning on capturing all the systems that are already in use in the migration context, and then therefore should be regulated as high risk. And again, we are almost at the end of the negotiations, and the text doesn't look good in this sense. For example, negotiators are not agreeing on regulating the use of biometric identification systems when we are identified at a distance without us knowing. But if, for people that also work in the space of migrants' rights, we know that there is a plan and investment into the use of fingerprint scanners and facial recognition scanners by law enforcement agencies and border management officers to identify someone that might be stopped for a stop and search in the street and might be asked to have their fingerprint checked, and this fingerprint would then be double checked against the various databases that contain biometric information on non-European citizens. And all of these type of technologies are it seems that won't be regulated as high risk by the AI Act. And other type of systems that might be left out are all the systems that are used for patrolling the borders or also to forecast migration movements, which is a new trend also, something that agencies like Frontex are really interested in. So how to make use of the large amount of data that have been collected throughout the years is also by building forecasting tool to forecast arrivals in a way that might be negative for fundamental rights, because it's just reproduce patterns. For example, to forecast the regular arrivals, they would use data on regular migrants that we know that is a very politicized definition. It's decided arbitrarily who is considered a regular migrant or not. So this forecasting will perpetrate this type of arbitrary labeling of who deserve more rights than others. So we said that this is very important, being aware of what systems are in place, who's using them where, and who's affected is at the core of this legislation, because it would allow us as civil society, as investigative journalists, as people affected, to know when our rights are not respected. But again, the Council has been proposing and is being very, very strong on this proposal to exempt law enforcement authorities and migration authorities from this obligation to register themselves into this database. So this proposal might not look that dangerous, but if you think about it, it would just make it possible for law enforcement authorities to say that they comply with the AI Act because there is no exemption for them, but at the same time, they will not have to show how they are actually complying with the regulation, because they won't have to be transparent in any way in the way they use AI systems. So in a way, it will legalize impunity, because it will legally codify abusive behaviors and not asking from these authorities to show in which way they are compliant with the law.